I'm Judy Spiegel. I currently work at the Work One Center in Elkhart, serving both Elkhart and St. Joe counties, assisting people with their job search needs and assisting employers with finding employees.
And what brought you to the world of theater in South Bend? There's a long history here, I think.
Right. Probably seeing theater as a child before I remember the first shows that I saw, and then taking acting classes when I was 8, 10.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Right.
Judy, there's a theater experience that you and I both share, which is Stratford, Ontario, and the Shakespeare Festival that goes on there. It's been in my life for many years, and yours too. You went earlier in your life than I did. Tell me about that.
Next year, 2021, will be the 50th anniversary of my first trip to Stratford.
Think of that.
I went in 1971 when I was 10 years old. That was my first trip. It was with my family, and since then I've gone with family and friends and solo, and I have a long love affair with Stratford. A little village called St. Mary's nearby, so the provincial park, so I'll go camping there. So they're the camping people and the theater people, and usually they're not the same people. But it's just a lovely way to be with nature and then be with theater, my passion.
Judy, I've realized over the years that you're not afraid of Shakespeare, and maybe this is why. You've seen a lot of Shakespeare in Stratford. You've directed some here in South Bend. And I know that you continue to be willing to direct in South Bend. Say something about why you're not scared of Shakespeare.
I think because I feel like I was weaned on it. I mean, I was 10, but it's exciting to me, and I love that I've been able to do some Shakespeare in South Bend. One of the things the acting ensemble did a few years ago, it was the first of our women doing productions, and we did women doing Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. So some of the women in the acting ensemble community got to do bits and pieces of Shakespeare might not otherwise get to perform. We got to play men's roles, we got to play ingenues, we got to play older people who we might not otherwise be able to perform, parts that we might not otherwise be able to perform, and we got to feel those words, right? The richness of those words in our mouths, the poetry, the meaning. It's one of the great things that you can do in a small theater is say, I really want to do this thing, and give actors an opportunity to play.
Judy, I've noticed that you feel that actors who are not familiar with Shakespeare can learn it with enough skill to put a performance together and put it on so that others will be impressed by Shakespeare. Where does that come from? Maybe just from that experience that you've had?
Probably. And the same year that we went to Stratford for the first time was the first time I ever performed Shakespeare. I was in 5th grade, and we did a 4-page version of Julius Caesar, and very, very abridged. That came from a Scholastic magazine insert.
Uh-huh.
And, if a 10-year-old can do it.
The words are not always considered rich by all actors and all audience members. But I appreciate it that you think it's rich, and I notice that you can sort of, pass that along to actors who are willing to try under your hand to take it on. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know how you can. So not everybody loves poetry, but the emotion that is created by that poetry, I think, is really amazing. So I was, I think, 13 when I saw King John. Nobody does King John, but I've seen it 3 times in Stratford. Mm-hmm. And I remember the magnificent Martha Henry playing the role of Constance, and she's going off stage. Her character believes that her son has been killed, and she has this unbelievably wrenching speech describing the loss of her child, my life, my joy, my food, my all the world, my widow comfort, and my sorrow's cure. I mean, as a 13-year-old, I was just, drenched in the words and my tears. It was, pretty amazing. I don't know how to not love that.
Thank you for that. I'm hoping that we will see more Shakespeare in South Bend, not just at the University of Notre Dame, but by local actors as well. It seems to deserve that that exposure. Judy, are there any other roles that you've played that you think fondly of?
There are quite a few that I've loved. The one that I probably felt most connected to, I did first in a full performance elsewhere, and then at the acting ensemble in a stage reading. The character is Mac in a play called Three Viewings. And one of the few roles that I really felt like I not lost myself, but was able to become that character in a way that she touched me, and I felt very connected. So that's probably certainly not a well-known play, but a play that I just love, a character I love playing.
And that doesn't always happen, this connection with one's character.
I think for some actors it does more than for other actors, and I think in some roles more than other roles. I mean, always the idea is to find the connection with that character. But also, the other thing about theater is that, at least my interpretation of becoming a character is becoming somebody who you're really not. I mean, everybody talks about finding the thing you have in common, but I love finding the things that I don't have in common, and exploring a person who I can't be and wouldn't be. And being able to embody that person through, wonderful writing and great direction, it's very exciting for me.
Judy, I saw you perform in Tony Kushner's Angels in America, Part 1. I was out of town for Part 2, but I was able to see Part 1. An amazing production, an amazing play, of course. And in that, you take on more than one role, which theatergoers are apt to see perhaps more at acting ensemble than at larger theaters. You were willing to take on several memorable characters. Can you say something about that play?
Sure. Well, first of all, I should say, to Kushner's credit, he prescribes in the script which characters people will play. They are actually meant to be played. Actors are meant to play multiple roles. So that's kind of an important piece. That's the expectation in this play.
And that's not a new concept, is it?
Not at all. And two of the characters I played were real people. They weren't composites. They were actual people. And so, that's not true. One of the characters was an actual person. All the others were composites or characters who were completely made up. And so, first of all, there's that responsibility to portray a real person, even though she's in a completely different role than she was in real life, in a very fantastical role. To play her responsibly. But the really fun role was the rabbi in that.
The rabbi was wonderful.
where I studied. I love accents and dialects, and I studied Russian accents and listened and spent a lot of time on that. And that's a lot of fun for me. Yeah.
Judy, I can't help but want to ask you about your ideas about directing. Because you have said positive things about Shakespeare and the ability of an actor to take on those roles, can you say something about what is the role of a director exactly? How do you envision that?
When you asked me that, I really wish I had ever taken a directing class. But I think certainly grown to understand it a lot more than I did the first two shows I ever directed. I was a disaster as a director. I was a micromanager. I wanted everybody to deliver every line and move every limb exactly as I would have, which is not so wonderful because I might not be that great an actor, right? So, so it might not be so smart. But the fact that my friendships with people like Lee and Steve Caregatz and Marianne Rand have survived is just amazing to me, because I was horrible director and not a very good friend. But what I've learned about directing is that I've learned to trust actors in a way that I didn't understand as an early director, and I've had a lot of opportunities to do that now, and to come in with an idea. So certainly I've auditioned people saying, look, this is one of the things that's going to happen in this production. So if you're in, you got to be in with that. But then to allow actors to explore what they do best, which is their own discovery, and to create a production as a collaboration, and not as a dictator, and to let people try things.
The dictatorial role is certainly one that the public associates with directing, and there have been some famous dictatorial directors. I've admired from afar my observation that you give actors more latitude to find their own understanding of a character, and then you are flexible enough to see if that in fact takes life on the stage with the other actors also considered. Am I reading that correctly?
I think so. I mean, I would say when an actor wants to go in a different direction from one that I envisioned, I almost always, I think I pretty much always allow them to try that. And I would say 50% of the time, I like what they're doing more than the thing that I had planned on having happen.
Okay.
50% of the time, I stick to my guns because I still think, no, I think this vision is going to work for this production. But it is a collaboration, and I think finding that actors have discovered something that I never even thought of, right? And a different interpretation that's so interesting. I'm really excited by that. I love learning from actors.
One of the things that highlights an acting ensemble performance is this ability to observe as an audience member the way that a production speaks without a lot of extra effects that sometimes mask what actually is happening. Could you say something about what might be the strength of a small operation like this? This is a tiny thing. We're in a paint store that we hope to transform into a play space. Do you see a role for this struggling small theater?
I do. I mean, I think about some of the things that we've been able to do that we couldn't do if we were beholden to larger audiences or some of the traditional things you'd expect. We still do, plenty of traditional things. But for example, these wonderful stage readings that have moved me to tears and made me laugh loudly, and I'm not a really big, loud audience laugher. One of the stage readings, and I honestly don't remember which one, that Lee Taylor directed, she said, we're not going to rehearse this. We're going to go in and the audience is going to see the first time actors read something through. And it was extremely well received. It was a smart thing for her to do. She had smart actors. We had read it over on our own, but we hadn't done anything together. And part of what she talked about when we had this performance of a read of a truly almost cold reading, or at least the table read essentially, was during the talkback. She talked about, here's the next thing that I would have done, and here's the next step we would have taken, and you can't do that. You can't do that normally and have people pay $5 or $7 or $8 for that. And yet they were a part of the process of this thing happening. Why people should support it? Yeah. I think we need to keep exploring, and I think we need to keep the options open to do new and creative things, like the children's book reading that we've done recently, and we're about to do another, and some of the things we've done in the community. I mean, there's so many different types of theater, and I think so many different types of theater group, and I think people need to support that. Please support the theater, please support the arts.